Hi, everyone. Have you ever wanted to know how to transition from employee to entrepreneur? We are going to have that conversation today with Dana Baugh, who owns Baugh out of Jamaica, and she's going to share her insight on how she was able to transition from an employee and part-time artist to a full-time entrepreneur. Hi, Dana. How are you?
Hi, Sherrie. Hi, everyone. I'm doing good. I'm actually here in studio in Jamaica. Just started the kiln and taking a moment to have this long overdue chat with you.
I'm excited to have you. The question that seems to be so popular today is how do we go from employee and maybe part-time artist to full-time entrepreneur? Can you share a little bit about how you were able to make that transition?
Okay, so for me, it wasn't, I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. I'm not that type of person. I like to tell people how it is. For me, it wasn't overnight or a split decision. It was a long journey for me to transition from being an employee in a decent job to having my own business. Um, I have my mother, grandmother, and family members. I come from a family of business owners. And I always knew I wanted to be in business, but I wasn't too sure what it was. I didn't want to just go into their own, their businesses that they had. I wanted to do something that felt right to me. And being someone that was creatively inclined, it kind of made sense that I should do a business where I made something or I was doing something where I was creating products. I always wanted to be a product designer, but that
Mhm.
was kind of frowned upon in Jamaica, going into a creative job or trying to be a product designer or a graphic designer. It was just like, that doesn't make any money or, you need to do something like one of the traditional things like careers like a doctor or a lawyer if you
Yeah,
wanted to be successful. And however, growing up, I was always because I grew up in a rural area, and we are in a rural area now. I moved back home to run the business. Growing up, I would all my parents and relatives would always give me stuff to do, so I developed my creative talents very young, and so that always stuck with me. However, I still did my first degree was in psychology. I went to the university here and you know, came back and joined Sandals Resorts, which is where we met.
exactly.
Um, yeah, so I worked with Sandals for 10 years before I left. Always with the viewpoint that, this is a learning experience for me. I love my job because I would say I'm a extroverted introvert.
Mhm.
So I like meeting people and I like, um, learning all these different aspects of running a business or running an operation. So I worked at the hotel and I worked at the head office. So I had
Mhm.
both sides of the coin from the hospitality industry. And when I went away to design school in the middle of that 10-year relationship with Sandals, and I came back, I decided that I wanted to start a business on the side. So I
Mhm.
wasn't going to leave my job because actually they had paid for design school. So I couldn't
Mm.
up and leave, even though I really wanted to go into design. But I did speak to my director at the time and said, is it okay if I started designing? I said to her I wanted to design lighting fixtures and probably do my ceramics, and if that was okay with them. And she was like, that's fine, just as long as you don't let those two things interfere with your work. And so it was great to be able to have that type of relationship with my director. And they saw that I wasn't trying to shortchange the company. I was always a person that worked long hours or gave really whatever needed to
Dedicated.
get the job done. So they weren't, I think that they felt comfortable knowing that I wasn't trying to do my work on their time.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so, there were moments where I got really frustrated. It's not easy working in the hospitality industry, and it's not easy working for someone else, especially in the type of dynamic that Sandals is. Now, for
Mm-hmm.
people who don't know, it's a Jamaican-owned company.
It is.
It's a family-owned. It's not like a public traded company or anything. It's all family-owned, but it's a huge company, and they have their directors and everything. But you still know that it's a family run business. So there's a lot of dynamic that comes into that, that if anybody that works in a corporate environment can understand how difficult and competitive that environment can be.
Absolutely.
And it was kind of frustrating for me at times, to be honest, because um not that there was a fight between, there were the struggles with, should I leave now or should I wait? And
Right.
then there were good days where you were happy doing what you were doing, and then there are bad days where you're like, oh my God, I can't spend one more day here. So I had tons of friends to rely on, and even people that didn't really support the decision of me starting a business on the side. I had to zone that out. I had to block it out and decided that, this is what I wanted to do. I'm going to start. I took basically all of my salary after I paid all my bills pretty much went into growing the business. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I would buy my first piece of equipment, my clay mixer, and I brought all my molds from design school because I did um, mold making for ceramics when I was at design school as an elective. So I had all of that stuff shipped back to Jamaica. And I just decided I didn't have a kiln, so I didn't even understand what I was getting into or how I was going to get them done, but I just knew that I wanted to start
Exactly.
doing. And so in my little apartment that I lived in, they gave me permission to use the garage to start. So I just made stuff, and I signed myself up for a show, and I was like, it's do or die. You have to do the show. You have told people that you're going to do the show. So you have to find a way to make the pieces. So I kind of set a
Exactly.
deadline in mind. So that if in terms of you want to take like steps, you have to set like a deadline, and you have to give yourself like a specific goal in mind and a timeline to do that. And
To make sure that
so
it's done.
to make sure that it gets done. Once you're in the situation, you're like, oh my God, what have I done? But you just keep going, right?
So then with that, let me ask you, what has been your greatest challenge in the transition?
My greatest challenge in the transition would be, I would say, managing all that I have to do, and being gentle with myself is what people are saying now, but just accepting that everything is not always going to be perfect, and trying to, it's more of an internal struggle. So there will be problems and issues and concerns and stresses of just running a business, cash flow and staff and all those things come with a business, and you can't get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say my greatest challenge would be the internal struggles of developing and growing as a business owner, as an individual, as an entrepreneur. Those are the struggles that um, you have to kind of coach yourself. If you don't have a business coach or a personal coach, you have to coach yourself, and you have to tell yourself that, okay, it's not perfect, or client may have gotten hard on you, or you didn't deliver what you thought you could have. It's all a learning experience. Just as long as you learn and you grow from that, that's the most valuable lesson in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that learning to manage my time, understanding that you can't get everything done in 1 second. So you have to pace yourself, basically, and take it one day at a time, as opposed to trying to get to the end before you even get to the first step, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. So then with that, what has been your greatest success? I know what I think is your greatest success. Seeing you in one of my favorite magazines, Fast Company, as a featured artist. Because I love that magazine and I've known you, and just to see your success. But for you, what do you feel like has been your greatest success in this transition?
The greatest success for me, I would say, um, would be to actually have a team that I have trained, that to be able to employ people, have people that you're responsible for, to be able to build a business within itself. I would say the business within itself and the growth, I would say, is my greatest success as an entrepreneur, getting closer to the vision. So I would say my that would be my thing that I'm most proud of in achieving or accomplishing. I don't think I've reached the pinnacle of success for me as yet, but I think my greatest success would be the realization that I'm actually at a good place in my business, even during this time of Corona, you know, being able to appreciate the fact that I've been able to weather the storm and I'm able to have a business that's ongoing and still has a future, and a business that is something that I'm passionate about, and I feel like I have a purpose and it's very fulfilling to do what I'm doing. So I think that's the greatest success, being able to just have that aha moment and just be aware of the fact that, you know, you have accomplished what you set out to do, even though it's not perfect and it's not at the end. It's along the journey in the direction that I want it to go, and understanding that I am successful in doing what I'm doing. So I think that would be my personal success for me.
And that's all that matters, though. So I know you mentioned being, in Jamaica creating crafts. So how has being in Jamaica impacted your business and the products that you create?
Well, all the designs are inspired by the island and the culture, and so there is a specific or a certain aesthetic that goes with that. It's not, the pieces I make are not what people think are typical of the Jamaican culture. They are my perception and my spin on it. And I think that that is a great influence on the work that I do. That's a pro for sure. One of the cons is that it's very hard to grow a business in Jamaica because it's very challenging with not having certain things in place, resources, the raw materials, and just having the support from a governmental standpoint. You know, there's not a lot of policy in place for businesses like mine to support growth as a business. So it makes it's a little bit more challenging, and also the society in general, art is not encouraged. So it's hard to find team members who are inclined to work in an environment like this, who actually have an art background or are interested in the arts. So they're good and bad. There's the good and the bad. But I would say the good outweighs the bad. You know, there are a lot of other things that being in Jamaica, you know, a lot of designers are inspired by the Caribbean, the beach and stuff, but my perspective is a little bit different because of how I was raised. And so I find that it's great to be able to have a different design perspective from a lot of people who live outside the country, and they have their own interpretation. So I would say for me, that's a great plus as well.
Absolutely. So in parting, I always ask, and this I'll ask of you, what advice would you give someone who's looking to make this transition from employee to entrepreneur?
I would say plan it properly. Don't just take the leap without knowing what you're going to do. Read as much as possible, because that's what I did. I was always on entrepreneur.com reading something online, reading stuff about, you know, the industry I was in. So I didn't have any delusions or fantasies going into it, other than thinking that it would be a lot easier. I made sure before I left that I was saving money. So I planned for whatever changes that would come my way. So my advice would be to plan properly. Make sure you have savings. Whatever you have in savings, try and double that as much or quadruple it, because whatever you think your expenses will be, trust me, it's going to be a lot more. And someone told me that, and I was like, oh yeah, and I did that, but it was still not enough money. But it was much better than leaving and not knowing how I was going to eat or how I was going to pay my bills, or how I was going to grow the business. So I would say that's something that you should do. And also have a strong support system. If you don't have that in your immediate family, talk to other people who might be going through the same thing or who have been where you've been, and who can encourage you and can give you advice. I went into program at the Branson Center. And if you can find something like that where you have a community of like-minded people, especially if you're in my type of industry or any type of industry, if you find like-minded people who can give you advice and who can help you, then that's a great thing to have. And the final thing I would say is just to be very um, dedicated and be easy on yourself. You know, take one step at a time. You're not going to get to the end result immediately, but if you hammer away at it and you chip away at it little by little, everything, you know, the entire vision will reveal itself. It won't be perfect, and as long as you're always about constant improvement and building on that foundation, then I think you'll be okay.
Awesome. So if people want to get in contact with you, they can reach you at
Well,
Baugh.
yes, at on Instagram is the easiest way to find me at
Yes.
Bauhaus. That's Baughaus at Bauhaus on Instagram or on Twitter or Facebook. Um, and you can just DM me and we can take the conversation there, or you can follow me on you can see more of my work on my website, which is www.bauhausdesign, no S at the end, .com, bauhausdesign.com.
Awesome. I want to take a moment to thank Well World TV for giving us the platform today. And if our viewers are interested in learning more about me, I too am available on IG at the SpaSOS. With that, Dana, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your insight and expertise. I wish you much success. I know you're going to continue to do amazing things, and enjoy Independence Day this week.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the best to you. And it was good chatting with you today.